Welcome back to the show, everybody. As always, I'm your host, Stewart Kraintz. We have another amazing guest for us this week. Going ahead to introduce her. She is a leadership coach and emotional intelligence facilitator. She has her PCC certification from the International Coaching Federation. And I couldn't wait to have her on the show because she's been absolutely influential and instrumental in me becoming the coach I am today and supporting me, quite frankly, in doing the work to become somebody that could support not only clients, but a family and, be the man of my own dreams today. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Amy Tuccio to the show. Thank you for being here, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stu. I'm really excited to be here on your podcast and have this conversation with you today, especially about coaching, which is one of my favorite topics. And it's also really how we got to know each other in the first place. So it's really exciting to dive in with you and also to impact the audience that you've created.
Thank you. Yeah, and I couldn't think of a better way to serve that audience to that end than to have one of my mentors on sharing a bit more about what you do. And in that regard, Amy, what is coaching? How does it differ from like counseling or therapy? And how does somebody know which is right for them if they find themselves looking to level up their lives?
Absolutely. So coaching, I think of coaching as a thought partnership where a coach and a coachee can come together and talk about what's happening in the present, but also looking forward to the future, which might mean aligning with values. It might mean exploring possibilities and different perspectives, and just having someone to talk to about things like goals, things about what's really important, maybe to process emotion and really looking at the patterns and the beliefs that they have and how they really get to where they want to be. So that's something that I think is really powerful in working with clients and helping them identify what's really important and how it differs from therapy. Therapy is really looking at the past and looking at how the past impacts the present. And so when therapists work with clients, they go into the past and look at healing some of those deep past experiences and also look at really coping strategies. So it's really getting people to a baseline of functioning, whereas coaching looks at the here and now moving forward and how to get people to where they want to be when they're already really at a solid baseline. And something I do also do trauma informed coaching. So sometimes coaching pairs with therapy where there's a client that I'm working with on their goals moving forward, but they're also working with a therapist on the past and some coping strategies and things like that. So that's kind of interesting, but it's really about looking at how do we help somebody become the best version of themselves, and how do we really look at their goals and look at what's important to them.
Awesome. And just want to ask more about the trauma informed coaching. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that's more in the sense like you said of you have goals, you want to work on them. Maybe you have some either imposter syndrome or other self-sabotaging behaviors that are possibly stemming back from a prior traumatic experience. How do you know that coaching is right for you in those scenarios, or you should go towards more of a traditional therapy route?
Yeah, I think it depends on where people are in their healing journeys. My background, I've also had trauma in my life. Many people, maybe
Mhm.
all people, have trauma with a big T or a little t. But when we're speaking about what somebody is ready for, it really depends on where are they now? Is it someone that really is having trouble day to day functioning? Are there really things that are like holding them back that they really need to heal in the past? Or is it that they've healed to a point and are just like, hey, I know that my past affects my current patterns. Maybe I need to go a little bit slower, but I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to work on what's current. So I think that's the key distinction is looking at where somebody is. And often people with trauma experience lack of confidence, lack of healthy boundaries. are maybe working on clarity. Maybe they've served other people, but haven't worked really on, hey, what do I want? And that's something that I noticed in working with people with trauma, as well as I have a kind of a pivot to or also working with executives and leaders
Mhm.
and noticing perhaps how trauma affects them as a leader. So it's a very interesting topic, and I think one where a lot of people tread lightly because
Mm.
it's it's something where if somebody really does need a higher level of care, where they maybe have some sort of either a mental illness or something that they're coping with that really is dealing with something in the past, that's more on the therapy side of the house.
Yeah. Yeah, and folks, for those of you listening to this, I am an advocate for both sides of this coin, both sides
Mm-hmm.
of this conversation. I'm pretty open about the fact that while I don't currently see a therapist, I did see 2 at one time for a while, and that actually benefited me greatly in terms of, getting the support I needed at that time, and I encourage you to reach out, find support for what you feel like you might need in your lives, for those of you listening to this. And you hit upon something, Amy, that I find really interesting is we hear all the time in the news, on LinkedIn, social media trends, blah, 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 all about how it's people leave jobs not because of the perks, not because of the work, but more often than not because of the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have been all over the map in terms of managers I've loved, managers that haven't gotten along with so well. And I'm curious how often in the coaching you do, you feel like it's coming from a place of trauma when a manager is overbearing or too harsh, or whether you feel like that's just the pressure of the company they're working for.
Yeah, it's very interesting to answer that because I think it does depend on the individual, but I do see that there's high stress when leaders are in high level positions or even in an environment of stress where they're looking to operate, they're looking to hit goals, and they might notice that there's something in their nervous system that might be dysregulated, like they might be in fight, flight, or freeze. And often that fight comes out in a little bit more aggression for people that are very high, maybe liking to be in control, natural, perhaps in higher level positions, but maybe haven't done the work on themselves or especially aren't aware of how they're impacting their team or impacting people. And I think that's a really important thing to look at because often leaders come to me working on their communication skills. They might be working on emotional intelligence. They might be looking at, hey, how do I develop my team? And part of that is things that kind of pick apart that control factor of, hey, how do I trust my team? How do I delegate effectively? How do I really empower my direct report to grow in their own career journey? And I think that it comes down to people have emotions and they're
Mhm.
often either proactive or reactive or kind of neutral to what's going on with them. And so I think most of coaching starts with awareness, being aware of what's going on with me as a leader, what's going on with my team, and how I can notice that even in a professional setting and be able to respond to what's going on versus reacting.
Yeah. Yeah, and so often we put ourselves behind the 8 ball relationally when we're coming from a place of reaction versus a place of being grounded. Maybe you don't like what's happening, maybe you are under a lot of stress, but communicating effectively, clearly, and from a baseline of neutral. I'm curious, as somebody who is also an emotional intelligence facilitator, when you're working with individuals, organizations where there isn't a culture in place of emotional intelligence, how can that type of communication be implemented? how do you support people in bravely doing that work in a workplace environment like that?
Yeah, I think it really starts with checking in with people on where they are and where they want to be, like what their goals are, where they want to end up at the end of the coaching engagement. And much of coaching is client led. They get to decide what's important and how they operate in that. And if there is a bit of a culture that's a bit more closed emotionally, or I've worked in the past with a lot of engineers. I started my career in the aerospace industry. So there may be, working with executives that are less likely to talk about how they're feeling or acknowledge how they're feeling, and more on the doing side of the house and the more analytical side of the house. So it really depends on where that person is. So in that kind of example, it might be building up the awareness of, hey, what's going on with you? Not so much what are you thinking, but maybe other awareness of what's going on with them emotionally, what's going on with their body, having them explore a little bit more what's going on with them, and then maybe start to notice, hey, how am I showing up with other people? How are they responding? What's going on with these other people? And getting curious about that just as an initial step of awareness to then say, okay, how do I want to influence my environment? What changes do I want to create? And have a bit of an exploration and a strategy around that.
Is there ever a point where it's overreaching or going a little too far as HR is concerned in terms of implementing and developing these tactics within an organization?
I can't think of anything that is overreaching, but I do think that people get to be sensitive around what's going on with other
Mhm.
people when it comes to, let's say, identities, diversity, why people do what they do. There's a little sensitivity there, and just being aware of how you're showing up and how other people are receiving that. So perhaps it's like if somebody is probing someone else on a particular behavior or something that they're doing, but it's part of like their cultural background or something, something that's going on for them that really isn't appropriate to ask about at work, or needs a little bit more sensitivity, because we're looking at belonging and inclusion and people being able to be authentic to themselves and their diverse backgrounds. That's something that I could see having a little bit of sensitivity around, and curiosity, sure, and being able to relate with people, but not putting people down or
Mhm.
having a situation where somebody feels uncomfortable because of how an individual is showing up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it's about owning your own experience.
Yeah, I think so. I think that a lot of leadership is about ownership. It's about owning and authenticity, owning one's own experience, being able to show up authentically, being able to explore and discover different pieces of leadership with others, and how the relationship is, because at the end of the day, leadership is about relating and connecting, and how we show up and influence others to live their greatness and really start to influence other people and be in a position where there's a common vision and people are growing together.
100%, and I want to switch gears a little bit here. You said that you came from aerospace industry. I came from the sports industry, which
Mhm.
obviously are two two very different places, but it sounds like from what you alluded to, not exactly the most emotionally intelligent environment. Neither's the sports world. It's although that's been in the news a bit more, I feel like. I'd love to hear a bit more about how you started from this industry and became the coach and facilitator that you are now.
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. So I worked as a manager. I was leading a satellite office of in our company, and really was a people manager, but also a project manager and key account manager, and led a bunch of people and projects, and really had almost no idea about how to support my staff. I really came in and became a manager pretty early in my career. I was just very early in my 20s and
Wow.
didn't really know. I knew how to run projects, I knew how to get stuff done, I knew how to be good at my job. But when it came to people, I was almost like, wow, this person's crying in my office because there's some stressor that happened and we're in a very, high pressure environment. And I'm not sure what to do with this person actually. This person in front of me needs some support. And I really was working on some of my personal and professional development and decided that I wanted to learn about emotional intelligence and really develop that skill of being a more effective manager, a more effective leader, and also connect on a personal level. Though I wouldn't say that I knew that to start off with, but that's what I ended up needing. And so I embarked on this journey of transformation and emotional intelligence. And really, I went through a series of trainings. And while I was there, I got this feedback of like, wow, Amy, have you ever thought about becoming a coach? And I did not at all. I had never even thought that that was a possibility, especially because I wasn't really confident in my ability to relate and influence people at that time. But I was deeply caring about people and really wanted to open my heart and be able to connect more deeply. And also, I was curious and wanted to know about people and wanted to help them and support them in their journeys. And so that really, really started a multi-year journey of me becoming a coach, of volunteering my time at first, and then getting credentialed as a coach, going through a variety of coach trainings, and really starting to influence and impact people and actively listen, ask powerful
Mm-hmm.
questions, all those foundational coaching skills, and really become in my curiosity versus being the subject matter expert in my job, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that last piece you said, what does curiosity allow for? What does it create in relationships?
I think curiosity creates possibility in being
Mhm.
able to just play in a way and get to know and learn different aspects of a person, have the awareness be built about oneself, around others. And the aspect of curiosity to me is very playful. It's very much an exploration. It's very free flowing. And I think that's very different than having one way to do something. So it's more expansive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's meeting people not only where they're at, but where they're at as they are right now in this moment immediately in front of you. And I was just
Mhm.
curious, no pun intended, your thoughts on curiosity, because I find that when we come from a place of curiosity and not assuming we know the answers or knowing what the other person wants or needs, we're actually able to relate to people on a much deeper level.
I think that's really true. There's a piece around learning and growing and being able to be open. I think openness is a huge part of curiosity as well, because it's the opposite really of judgment. Curiosity is
Mhm.
a space of openness, expansion, and being able to connect because there's not any judgment present. You're just present with somebody exploring.
What do you feel like were the skills in terms of listening, relating to people, being curious that you maybe excelled at as you were starting at your coaching journey, and maybe what had the biggest area for growth, let's say?
Mm. Yeah, I think when I was at the very beginning of my coaching journey, there was this sense that I had to know everything in some way. Because that was something
Yeah.
that I had been used to. Like, oh, I need to give people answers, or I need to deliver value in some way that's giving some knowledge that I have, which is more on the consulting side, of course.
Mhm.
And what I really learned is just being present with somebody, asking powerful questions, having them explore the wisdom inside themselves so that they can take action and on their vision and have more of what they value in their lives. That is incredibly powerful, and it's also something that people don't always have in their lives. They don't always have somebody that's going to create space to listen without judgment, to offer perspectives and possibilities. And that is an invaluable gift to many people that are trying to gain clarity around something or feel stuck or want to explore more of what they want, but they're not maybe not quite sure what that is. Or if they are, maybe there's been something that's been stopping them from achieving that goal or taking that action.
Yeah, and so I ask you all this, Amy, because I know for a fact that a lot of the people that listen to this show are either getting started on a coaching journey, building a business that is for themselves, or they're at least considering it. Like it's something that
Mm-hmm.
may be similar to what you described, maybe someone suggested for you, and maybe they're afraid to dip their toe in the water, so to speak. What do you wish you knew when you were getting started that you would give any prospective coach now who's trying to get this started for themselves?
I mean, what comes up for me is really to yourself. Trust yourself if you're getting a little whispering of like, hey, this is the direction I want to go in. I think that there's something to really say in that and learn from and follow that path of your intuition when it calls. I would say coaching is something that takes consistency to learn. There's a lot of
Mhm.
skills that are related to coaching, and it's helpful sometimes to have your own coach and a mentor or be in a coach training, things like that. And I didn't quite know what was involved when I embarked on this journey. So I would say for people to find the resources that support them,
Yeah.
that help them to become a better coach or become a coach in general, and to know that it's a continuous learning and development process. You don't need to know everything to start. You just get to focus on being present, asking some questions, trusting yourself at what comes up, allowing the conversation to flow, and to really find those spaces that are the fulfillment and the values and the vision in the journey. And also to explore different avenues for actually making a living as a coach or having whatever your intention is around, hey, what do I want to do with coaching? Because I think that coaching skills can be very valuable, whether somebody wants to go and do run a coaching business or if they want to implement coaching skills into management or into some other role that they have, or they want to do it part-time, or they want to pair it with what they're currently doing as a therapist or something else. So I would say to consider the possibilities and to know and notice really what's right for you, or maybe explore different avenues to see what resonates.
Yeah. Oh, so well said. And I think there's a million things I could say in response, but what I want the listeners to hear is that developing my listening skills, which is something I thought I was pretty awesome at before I decided to become a coach, that has to have been the single greatest return on investment for any trainings I've done, any volunteer work I've done as a coach, just learning how to listen and listen effectively. And I think more importantly, listen in a way that the person speaking to me knows that I got it and that they were heard and that they were taken seriously. That has continued to pay dividends over and over and over again. And another thing you said, there is that balance to strike, I feel, between trusting yourself to just jump in the pool, so to speak, and make it happen, and also remaining humbly curious and knowing that you don't know what you don't know. Every time I feel like I've learned something, I realize there's just so much more in the world of coaching that I don't know. And I feel like as long as people are excited by that, and that it's more of a heck yes, I want to keep going. I feel like that's how you know that pursuing coaching as a career, or actually, as you said so well, just augmenting a skill set is for you. I'm wondering if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that it's all around intentionality. There's so much around being intentional and looking at, hey, what do I want to use these skills for? And I think it comes down to communication, presence, being able to be curious and explore that curiosity, ask powerful questions that empowers people to make their own decisions and almost gives permission to explore possibilities and in ways that perhaps people say things out loud during coaching sessions that maybe they've never told to anybody. They've never said it out loud, and they
Mhm,
say it and it's like, oh, wow, I've never said that out loud, and that was really powerful for me. And I
mhm.
think creating those moments, if you're a coach or you're training to become a coach or you're using coaching skills, creating those moments for people really creates the aha, creates that new possibility, creates that breakthrough. And that's some of the most rewarding work that you can do. And I think people that are called to do that, called to serve people in a way of opening up possibility, I mean, that is coaching. And that's something that exploring coaching skills creates in the world.
Yeah, and just to double down on what you just said, folks, I'm an auditory processor, so I'm definitely someone who kind of synthesizes ideas, put connects the dots, so to speak, by talking it out loud. Sometimes just to hear myself. I am can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm openly admitting on this podcast that I will talk to myself when I'm alone in the car because it helps me process.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone with a coach, with a mentor, and two problems at the same time, I'll suddenly be able to connect the dots on and see, oh, here's like the one action I need to take to solve both of these issues. And that might seem silly and small, but as a coach, you have no idea how much value you're providing when you're providing that space for somebody to process like that. And I'm curious, Amy, obviously you can't name names, but are there any particular success stories with anyone you've coached or maybe even in your own life where you felt like having a coach or being the coach made a huge difference?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've had a number of clients come to me because they want to shift in their career, they want to get a promotion, or they have a big goal that they want to achieve. And sometimes in exploring, it ends up being quite different.
Mhm.
So I have a client that really started off her journey wanting to shift her career, and it ended up, yes, she wanted to shift her career, but there were also shifts to be made in her relationship and her health and other areas that just became apparent when we started exploring. And now she's married, she's got a baby on the way, she's shifted her career and is really living the life of her dreams. But it took this bravery of looking at and facing, hey, what's in my life that's not what I want right now.
Mhm.
And this bravery of like processing emotionally what's going on with that and how do I get to where I want to be? And the bravery of leaping into something new and creating a new possibility. And I see that as it builds confidence with people in so many different areas of
Mhm.
people getting promotions or finally losing weight that they want to lose or finally putting out a product or a podcast or something that putting out a book that they have been afraid to release into the world and having the support of coaching helps them take that leap or have that transformation and feel confident and joyful and connected in the process. And sometimes people don't even realize that that's what they need when they're exploring coaching, or they don't even know what coaching is. They're like, oh, I don't know. I think this might help me, but like, I don't understand what this even looks like. What do you even do when you work with somebody? And so I think there's been a lot more popularity around coaching in the business world and for individuals now more than ever. And there's still this piece of educating people about what coaching is and looking at what the results might be in their lives.
Yeah. Love your opinion on this. I feel like the only time I've ever seen coaching not work is usually some variation of the person receiving the coaching hired the coach or is working with the coach, and somewhere in there, maybe even it's subconscious, but they're expecting the coach to do the work for them. Like, the coach is there to guide you, walk alongside you, reveal the answers that are inside of you to you as a part of the conversation. But at the end of the day, you gotta do the work.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that for coaching to work super well, it requires people to really look in the mirror and really do the work on themselves, be real and honest with themselves, take in feedback if they're requesting that, and make the shift, make the change. And there's a certain desire to change that's part of that, and a commitment as well. And that's one of the things, like to what you're saying, you can't coach commitment. You can
Yeah.
coach everything else, but it's the internal commitment to change that's going to get people results. And I wouldn't say coaching, I think coaching always works for people that are open to coaching, that want to be there, that are like, oh, okay, I'm going to show up for my sessions. I'm going to talk. I'm going to listen to myself. I'm going to reflect. And the degree to to how it works depends on their ability to, their commitment to change, and also their ability to implement those changes, meaning in between coaching sessions, that's where the magic happens. That's where there might be some even more processing, or that might be where the action is, or that might be where they create a new awareness about something. And so that all happens, in between in real life, in the 1 or 2 weeks in between coaching sessions. And I think that's part of the integration of coaching as well, is it's not
Mhm.
just the time you spend with a coach, it's everything else that contributes to that holistically to create the change.
I've actually even heard of coaches saying things like, you cannot have another call with me until you're in a place of breakdown, because that will mean that you've been out there doing all the things we've implemented, that you actually find yourself in a breakdown because you've pushed yourself far enough outside of your comfort zone to warrant more coaching.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very much comes back to when a person feels best supported, and that getting out of the comfort zone, having somebody in your corner when you're exploring the skinny branches and getting out there and doing things that are stretchy or uncomfortable, that create the next version of you. And that piece of, a coach will encourage those steps if that's supporting the vision of what the person wants, and helps them get there through being able to see the path and see what's right for them really, and how they, perhaps they want to impact more people, perhaps they want to make a difference in the world, perhaps there's an initiative that has been deep inside that they haven't really sat down and listened to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the bigger the vision for what we're looking to create, the more risks you're going to need to take, the greater possibility and greater likelihood of breakdowns. And that is when coaches come into play. So
Mhm.
I'm curious, Amy, while I got you here and on the subject, what is your current vision for the work you do, the coaching you do, or just what you're looking to create in the world?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. My vision is to empower myself and others to live their best lives, make impact, and to do it in fulfillment with their values and curiosity and joy and adventure, and having a space of exploration to get there. And what that practically looks like is I work with individuals and leaders to live their visions, to often gain confidence, to take that risk that maybe they haven't taken, to free themselves up, maybe empower their team to take on more, to trust themselves in the process. And that gets better results than they ever thought possible, and maybe in different ways than they thought they wanted or needed. And the exploration of it illuminates what really matters to them. And that, I think, is really important. And it's also the reason why I also train coaches and mentor them in becoming coaches and becoming better coaches. So part of my vision is also to be supporting coaches in their journeys and being able to develop their coaching skills and get out there in the world to make an impact.
I love that. What is maybe, again, I know you probably can't name names, but what is maybe your favorite success story in either a client or somebody that you supported?
My favorite success stories are the ones that kind of sneak up, meaning that I might work with somebody for 3 or 6 months, and maybe we got to the end of the engagement. Often my corporate engagements are pretty set. Like, I don't work with them more than the 6 months that they're contracted for. And so sometimes I don't know what happens with them after.
Mhm.
And so my favorite is when I'll get a surprise LinkedIn message or something that says, "Oh, thank you so much. We worked together last year, and now I've gotten that promotion that we were working on. I've developed my confidence. I've developed these other skills. I've grown my team." Whatever the success is, that they come back and share it. And that to me shows that I don't know the ways in which I've impacted people fully. It's only in kind of these these waves of change that happen out in the universe that sometimes something comes back to me and I'm like, oh wow, like that really was impactful for them. I didn't maybe know it at the time, the depth of it, but it's changed this person's life. And that's something that's really rewarding as a coach, and also shows that transformation isn't static. It's not just, okay, I met with a coach for 3 months and everything stops. It's that growth and impact continues over time and continues to create something new. And that's really something that's really beautiful.
I love that. Ugh, wish we could keep going, but we are going to be running out of time here pretty shortly. So I want to make sure that people are able to continue the conversation with you, reach out to you directly about coaching, the services you provide. What are the best ways for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my website is leadingtothrive.co. I have a business called Leading to Thrive that does leadership and executive coaching and also coach training and mentoring. And I'm also on Instagram at Leading to Thrive. Those are both really great ways to get in contact with me. And I'm sure that, Stu, you'll put my contact information along with the podcast. But I'm happy to connect with anybody that would like to explore more, or just to connect and delve into the topic of coaching.
Yeah. And if you're hearing this and you have a team or run an organization, definitely reach out to Amy about possibly bringing her in as well to work with your organization around emotional intelligence, around leadership. I can't recommend her highly enough. She's been a fixture in my life for almost 5 years now, which is crazy to say out loud. But Amy, this is all a testament to who you be and the work that you do. And so while we are getting ready to sign off here, I want to ask you, what are you acknowledging yourself for today?
I'm acknowledging myself for my leadership. Earlier today, I actually met with my team and they were acknowledging me for really stepping up as a leader, for being an example, for communicating, for emotional intelligence, for empowering them. And I think that that to me means I'm walking the walk. And that is really important to, for me, the integrity piece, but also my own journey of growth and taking the lessons learned in and applying them to my own life and leadership.
I love that. I love that, Amy. And if I can acknowledge you, I would acknowledge you for your leadership, for being somebody that, as you said, walks the talk and I think gives on a level that not only gets the result, but shows how much you care about the people that you work with. And I feel like in a social media world where we are always comparing ourselves to others, like that's actually not that common anymore. So I acknowledge you for who you be and who you be authentically, quite frankly.
Thank you, Stu. I'm curious about what you're acknowledging yourself for.
I think in this moment, I'm acknowledging myself for continuing to continuing to trust that by putting in the work, everything's going to work out the way I hope. Yes, we get to not be attached maybe to how the end result comes to play because we don't have control over everything all the time. But I think showing up to do the work and trust that it's going to be received, particularly as it relates to this podcast, we're actually nearing the 1 year anniversary. We're probably by the time this comes out, we'll be either 50 episodes in or just over, which is really
Congratulations.
amazing. Thank you. Amazing and beautiful and crazy to say out loud, but it's all a testament to faith, but also showing up to do the work. And I hope that anybody listening to this knows that sometimes, actually, not even sometimes, oftentimes the hardest thing is just to get started
Mhm.
because I couldn't be on nearly episode 50 if I didn't do episode 1. So I appreciate you now for being a part of the journey. Like this, whoever's listening to this when it first comes out or years down the road, like you will have been a part of this show. So thank you, Amy. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Stu.
Thank you again. And folks, please like, please subscribe. I know you got some value out of this today, especially if you are somebody who is interested in coaching, wants to know more about coaching, or is a prospective coach yourself. Please share this out with somebody. Please give it a 5-star review, particularly if you are catching this on Spotify. It just helps conversations and leaders like Amy be found more relevantly in the search function. So, looking forward to catching you all again next week. We will have another amazing guest or message for you. Until then, this has been your inside track to success. We'll see you then.